Bueno, hoy tenemos el placer y el honor de escuchar a Abbe Miller, ¿vale? Yo soy Norma Irene García Reina y formo parte del grupo de trabajo de la ATE de formación continuada, donde se están organizando el evento Mariposa, Encuentros con el Conocimiento, ¿vale? Tenemos el placer de escuchar a Abbe Miller. Abbe Miller es doctora, arteterapeuta certificada, con licencia como consejera profesional. Ha practicado y enseñado en Estados Unidos los procesos del arte transformacional y la terapia de arte por más de 40 años, con más de 70 talleres y presentaciones de trabajo. Es profesora adjunta del programa del grado de terapia y asesoramiento artístico del Albertus Magnus College de New Haven, Connecticut. Mantiene también una práctica privada y realiza exposiciones artísticas de su obra con regularidad. Ha creado, investigado y publicado sobre su protocolo El Duende, Process Painting, durante más de 20 años y recientemente ha publicado una baraja preciosa de unas cartas oráculo de Soror Mística, cartas de la hermana mística interior que pueden ser usadas en la terapia de arte y para el crecimiento personal. El año pasado tuvimos el placer de tener a Abbe aquí en Barcelona en una formación de 2 días donde nos enseñó a las supervisoras arteterapeutas a cómo utilizar su método de trabajo y ojalá que en septiembre del año del septiembre del año que viene, del 2021, podamos volver a tenerla aquí en Barcelona y estaréis todas y todos invitados. La entrevistará en esta ocasión nuestra querida Egle Casagrande Africano, la actual presidenta de la asociación ATE. Es arteterapeuta y supervisora acreditada por ATE y por FEAPA. Desde el 2010 trabaja como arteterapeuta en la clínica privada y en diversos centros con personas adultas en diferentes campos como disminución psíquica, trastornos de la alimentación, violencia machista. Y desde el 2017 colabora con Médicos del Mundo en talleres impartidos en institutos sobre violencia machista de LGTBIQ, fobias, mujeres migradas, personas supervivientes de trata y formación con perspectiva de género. Es docente y conductora de grupos desde el 2014 en la Escuela de Arte y Arteterapia de Metáfora y supervisora acreditada de arte. Es fundadora y codirectora del proyecto del Tercer Espacio, Arteterapia y Creación. Nuestro traductor es Richard Beth, con gran trayectoria como traductor profesional desde el 97 y ha traducido también en otros cursos de arteterapia y trauma, en alguna ocasión que nos ha apoyado. Bueno, pues está también Eileen, nuestra querida Eileen, que es amiga de Abbe Miller, que nos ha ayudado también muchísimo en la traducción, en las formaciones con Abbe. Bienvenidos a todas y a todos y cedo la palabra para vosotros. Gracias.
Bueno, muchas gracias Norma. Bienvenido Richard, bienvenida Abbe. Estamos muy contentas y Aileen también de tenerlas aquí y gracias a todas las personas de todo el mundo que están. Entonces, bueno, iremos directamente ya casi a las preguntas, porque lo que queremos hacer es escuchar a Abbe con sus protocolos y que nos explique un poco esta primera pregunta, ¿qué significa, no? ¿En qué consiste el protocolo EDPP y EDPP? ¿Y cómo surgió este deseo de combinar el duende y esta manera de hacer intervención basada en el arte?
Thank you, Norma and Egle. So happy to be here with all of you and to share more about the El Duende process painting method that really came from my heart and soul and passion about art making and transformation and change that could occur over time on one surface. And so this method was really born from many, many years of practice and experience and really knowing that something magical happened when transformation was able to be seen and that personal agency in making that transformation and listening to creative process in service of that transformation, became more conscious. And so over my many years, I've been an art therapist for 40 years. Over my many years of studying and learning and being aware of really concepts and theories way beyond art therapy, I was sitting listening to a recording of Clarissa Pinkola Estes, who is a Jungian analyst. And she was speaking about a myth and started speaking about El Duende. And I had never heard the term before, and everything inside of me lit up. I started vibrating really, and was a little bit surprised by that. And so I explored what is the Duende? What is El Duende? What does this mean? Where does this come from? Where is this term from? And so that led me to exploring and learning more about Lorca and the ways in which creative process has its own language and reality of manifesting through the body so that something really deep and authentic is felt. And that for me, combining an awareness that when we make art, we can feel it, and that others viewing that art can be affected by that, that kind of communication matters. To me, that felt like a proper naming for a method that was all about really authentic communication. So how could that communication be supported? And, you know, in art therapy, we have many prompts and we have directives, but I felt that something more needed to be added. And so the El Duende process came into being as I paid attention to intrapersonal conversations during art making, interpersonal conversations during art making, and the bigger field, the kind of transpersonal conversations that might occur when an image would come, or a symbol would come, or a form would come. And so paying attention to all of those multiple layers of awareness became an integral, really foundational aspect of El Duende process painting. So there were 4 qualities to what really sets the unique one canvas method apart from other methods. The first is that art making transforms continually on one surface over an extended period of time. And so that might mean over many hours, it might mean over many days, it might mean over months or years, but that the canvas and what's being placed on it and taken away continues to be layered and layered and layered over time. That's the first quality. The second quality is the way in which we are asked to pay attention to that art making process, that the attention is from a very welcoming of any and all images, a very aesthetically oriented, sensual process of noticing, what does this feel like? What does the imagery want of me? So it's conversing with the art, not just putting into the art what our egoic mind wants to happen. The third quality is that there's always an artistic and video documenting, some kind of visual documenting of the process. So for me, I began and continue to do the work by taking digital photographs along the way. And then eventually those photographs become a slideshow or a video or a movie to feel into the movement. Additionally, when I did my doctoral work, I actually videotaped participants doing the process, and participants also wore a Hero GoPro camera on their foreheads. And so we had a kind of, you know, artist's eye view that added into that. But the visual documenting is what was and is essential for El Duende. Part of that is because over time, images are lost or covered over. They change. And we become attached to some of our images and we want them to stay. If we know that they are going to be preserved in time in some ways, it allows us to release into change. And so that was an essential component. Work is being open to the experience of allowing this process to be one in which
Se ha cortado, sí. Norma, también.
Sí, se congeló la imagen de Abbe.
Sí.
Sí, es conexión de ella, creo.
A ver, espera que lo sentimos un momento. Que... A ver, aquí
Ahora, ya
está.
está.
Ahora está, a ver, ahí está.
Okay, better?
Ok. Sí, algo pasó, la conexión.
Yeah, okay, well, that's okay. I was just looking up something, and so I would like to, yeah, so. The other aspect of the El Duende process painting that is really quite essential is having interim periods, having breaks between the active painting, active art making, and time away from the active art making. Because what that opens us up to is a period of creative gestation, creative incubation, but that the creative process is still happening. There's still a relationship to this work of art, both actively in art making and more passively away from art making. So I also adapted and applied this process to using it in supervision. And those of you who have been in art therapy supervision understand that that relationship and that experience is a learning process. It's a learning and growing process. And we want to be very aware of how does working on this one canvas over time facilitate, negotiate, support a kind of learning and growing process in and through the art. So the art making is central, and it begins and goes through 5 phases in supervision. And these phases are linear and circular at the same time. So they don't go in a straight line. They are all inclusive, and you might go through one phase and come back to another phase. But ultimately in supervision, all 5 of these phases are really quite important. The first is that there is a warm-up and an invoking in that warm-up of some sense of connection to the transpersonal. And what's important about that quality, that practice, is often in supervision, there is a kind of attention to tell me what to do, tell me what I should be doing or what I should be thinking or how to proceed, rather than listening. And so by invoking the presence of a greater field, as Jung would say, the collective unconscious, by invoking that, it allows supervisees to pay attention to these other fields of awareness. Just a reminder. And so it might be saying, what element do you want to invite in? Do you want to invite in earth or water or fire or air? Just that simple awareness expands the experience. After invoking that kind of presence, the second phase is to be painting in a progression. So you're going to paint continually on one surface. You can bring in as many assemblage materials as you want. So found objects, collage imagery, people bring in their own materials. I have them in my studio. And during that time, there is a continual photographing. of the work, as I said, having that visual documentation. So we begin with a warm-up that invokes symbolic awareness. We move into a sequential art making that goes over time. When I teach this in college, in graduate school, that's 15 weeks. When I do individual supervision with professionals, that can go as long as, a few years. It just depends on how long somebody wants to engage in one painting and make some switches. So often what will begin the process in supervision is inviting an awareness between a professional self-identity and the personal self-identity. And so we invite that into the experience. We invite in that tension of opposites. And we will continually, as the painting progresses, be attentive to where is the tension, where is the struggle, which mirrors the experience in our relationship with our clients. Where is the tension? Where is the struggle? Let's bring that to light in supervision, but let's bring it to light through the art making first, and then bring words to that. So those are the first 3 phases. We have the bringing in the symbolic archetypal energy. We have a warm-up, personal and professional, and then we have sequential photographing and painting. The 4th aspect, the 4th phase, which occurs generally each week, is some journaling and active imagination reflecting. Those of you who are supervisors or in supervision know that the heart of supervision is learning the depth of reflection. How to reflect back on what we're noticing, what we're seeing, what we're feeling, where we're feeling lost, but reflecting rather than just responding or reacting, right? So that journaling and use Jung's active imagination journaling process begins to put words on the experience, and then it's used in peer feedback. So the feedback loops come through some active imagination journaling, which are led by prompts that the supervisor, yes. Did you have a question? Yeah.
Quería hacer la pregunta, a ver si era así de claro. Entonces estás diciendo que está en el proceso el solo lienzo, y a la vez de trabajar en un solo lienzo, también se lleva un diario con una respuesta para la imaginación activa.
Yes.
Entonces va a la par, ¿no? Trabajar sobre un solo lienzo y el cuaderno. Vale.
Yeah.
You're working on one canvas and then you're working on you said writing on that canvas. You're writing at the same time.
Yes, when we stop the painting process, we have a journal and we sit and look at the painting and write in the journal and then reflect back that way. And that closes class. Yeah. So the last phase is the final project. And that last phase means that students or supervisees will take the photographs that they've taken, the progressive photographs over time, and put them together in a slideshow or a movie. And they may add music. What that does is that it shows the arc of the story, of the narrative that they have gone through and encountered, and what they have really integrated and experienced through this supervision process. I think it would help maybe to, Norma, if we could show the video so that participants could actually see an El Duende process painting that I used for my own self-reflection. This was my personal process. And a little bit of the backstory of this is I was really trying to process, my daughter had experienced 2 heartbreaking miscarriages. And I needed my art to try and understand and be with and process. And so as you're watching this, you can just hold in awareness the progression. This was all on one canvas over about 4 months. So if you would share that, I think this would be a nice time. Yeah, thank you.
Sí, lo comparto.
Seriously, because last summer,
Solo tomar un poco de aire y quedarnos con esta imagen, ¿no? del proceso.
Yeah. So that's the potential of the richness of working on one canvas and opening up to listening to what the images and art want and how they want to change and how life changes and how our relationship with our clients changes continually. No two sessions are alike. And so this El Duende supervisory process really reinforces change, that change is necessary for life. And how we can embrace supporting change and what kind of change is life enhancing, to sense that, to be able to use the sensual awareness that we have as artists and art therapists is a vital part of the El Duende process painting supervision. So I think that is a bit of background and hopefully some clarity about little taste of what it is. I think that many who may be aware of having experienced this process in supervision, and also for personal growth. But it has so many possibilities. And I'm happy to see where else you are curious about, Egle.
Bueno, estaba ahora que nombras bastante lo de la supervisión, porque por un lado el duende es una técnica que en un principio nos ayuda como arteterapeutas, como crecimiento personal y para afianzarnos en el oficio, ¿no? En la profesión de arteterapia. Pero luego ajustándolo a la parte de la supervisión, ¿no? Nos estábamos preguntando si es una técnica que podría ser útil para otro tipo de psicoterapias o otro tipo de intervenciones, como supervisión. No hablo desde lo personal como persona, sino como una técnica de supervisión. Si puede ser aprendida o enseñada, por ejemplo, para personas psicólogas o desde otras líneas de psicoterapias. ¿Cómo lo piensas o si has tenido experiencia con otras personas que no sean arteterapeutas?
People who aren't, aren't art therapists.
So I think what would draw anybody to using this process would be a curiosity about another way of knowing, another way of having awareness, and symbols, shapes, colors, forms. The introduction to this process is really quite simple, where you invite somebody to bring color to the canvas and then to just kind of play with the canvas. So I believe, and my experience has been, that it's a process that is very inviting to those who feel they have no artistic experience, to those who feel that they can't make art. And that's been my experience. It certainly was my experience in my doctoral dissertation work, that people found the process very welcoming, very new, and enlivening for them. I think that it lends itself to supervision because it really offers us to learn and develop ways of knowing through the language of art and the senses. I think for other professions, especially other healing professions or mental health professions, the curiosity might be there, but I think in order for somebody to really grow with this process, they would need to experience it and notice what happened for them. In the experience, there may be some discomfort, and if they're willing to grow through discomfort, then absolutely this process could be used with them. I have supervised other professionals who were social workers and psychologists who were not art therapists, and they were actually very, very touched by what they were able to access just by attending to color or shape or form or a paintbrush. But I think there would need to be an openness and a curiosity. So I always try and cultivate curiosity, compassion, and what are the many ways of connecting? How does that happen through art making? How can that be facilitated? How can that be supported? And what are we curious about? So if somebody's a social worker and they come to me for supervision, usually supervision, there's an issue or curiosity or challenge. So having them engage in a process painting in the El Duende work by saying, what shape or form or color is this challenge? It might be, I hate this client. So what color, shape, or form comes up? Let's put that in the painting. And what is the opposite? What are the opposite colors? Let's put those in. And then helping them just give into the experience, just get into the process, and then seeing what emerges. That will give them insight about their relationship to that client and what might be keeping them stuck. So while we cherish as art therapists, we cherish the wisdom that comes from art making. I think other professionals might initially see it as a novelty, but I think that when they start to experience it, I think it would really feel very enriching and certainly embodied, because when we make art, we have to be in our bodies to some degree, not just in our heads. And I feel like that's a really rich way of knowing.
Me hace pensar esto a un poco la conversación que teníamos antes de abrir el seminario, en que quizás una manera de captar a nuestros clientes o usuarios y acompañarlos es pensarlos de otra manera.
Think of it a different way.
Yes.
Think in a different way.
Yes. Yes. It takes us, our awareness, into multiple fields of awareness, multiple ways of being with the client. So being able to put that client into art form, and then even bring in a color for yourself. And where does that color want to go in the canvas? So if the client's here and you put yourself here, we might be curious about, well, how could they bridge? What artistically do you want to put in there to allow a connection? And what kind of connection artistically would come up? It's not the same kind of intervention as saying, what would I say to the client? Or, what posture would I do with the client? It's artistically letting the creative process offer some solutions that meet the needs of the art, of the imagery, that we wouldn't otherwise necessarily think of, right? So those possibilities are infinite. They're endless. And so they keep, I think, within the process, the supervisory process, a real engagement with, there isn't a right or wrong. There's a way to be curious and hold space and be open that will allow us to move beyond, say, a stuckness, or beyond a wall, or beyond a fear, that fear that locks us into disconnect. So we want to process artistically connection. And then the quality of the connection. Did connection happen through blending colors, or did connection happen by bringing in some fabric, something tactile and kinesthetic? Or did connection happen by first putting a boundary around each of us, and then it felt safe enough to connect? So all of that is information for the supervisor to be paying attention to. What is my supervisee struggling with? And how can I support him or her or them to be open to what kinds of creative solutions might be possible? Yeah.
Estaba pensando también en lo difícil que es como supervisor arteterapeuta, ¿no? Tu lugar de poder encontrar esas conexiones precisas que ayuden a pensar a la persona supervisada, ¿no? Que está trabajando con su cliente. Porque a veces tiene que ver con la propia percepción.
Self-perceptions.
Yes.
Self-perceptions.
Yeah. Well, what's beautiful about the Egle is that actually the painting and the creative process does more of the work than the supervisor. So what I mean by that is, if I can get out of my own way of thinking I'm supposed to know, and orient to what am I seeing and feeling is happening in this art,